Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Ryan and I play a lot of Civilization VII. Today I'm going to be explaining to you what you should do in the first 30 turns of any game of Civilization VII. And I'll be explaining it at 3 levels of difficulty. Governor difficulty, which is for those new to the game or looking to learn core mechanics and strategies that might help you. Sovereign difficulty for those experienced at Civ and are looking to master advanced strategies and improve your general gameplay. And Deity Difficulty. Players I would consider to be masters at Civ looking for the most complicated tips and learning I can think of, where we'll be focused mainly on thinking a step ahead of what you're currently doing. Let's start by explaining the first 30 turns of Civ 7 at Governor Difficulty. When you load into a new game of Civilization 7, the first thing you want to do before you select your unit or look around the map too hard is click on this lens toggle. This will let you select the settler lens. Now there are 3 colors you want to be looking at here. Red, these are the tiles that you can't settle on because they're blocked. In this case, because either they have resources on them, you can't settle on top of resources, or mountains, exactly the same problem. We then have yellow and blue colors. Blue means a tile has fresh water, so if you settle your city on top of that tile, you will get a bonus 5 happiness in your city. Just the 3, it just gives it to you. If you settle on yellow, your city will otherwise be exactly the same and will do everything you need it to do. There is no problem with settling on yellow, but you won't get the +5 happiness. Ideally, if you can, settle on top of a blue tile. And in this case, the game is actually telling me to settle on this tile. Abundant resources nearby. You can see the resources by all of these little icons around the map. We have silk, wine, salt, and dates, as well as some pearls off the coast. Your city can access any resources within 3 tiles of where you actually settle. So in this case, if I was to settle in place, not only would I have access to water, but I'd also have every single resource within range. Not a bad thing to do. Let's found settlement by clicking this button down the bottom right. In your first turn, you will be offered a selection of 2 units that you can build, a scout or a warrior. Now, in future turns, your capital city will have production. Currently, I'm working 5 production per turn. You can see by this little hammer icon and the 5 written below it. All units have a production cost and it'll take a number of turns for me to finish a unit based on how much production I have. So if the unit is 30 production, it would take me 6 turns to build it. The first unit that you build is effectively 3. So you get to choose, do I want a scout or do I want a warrior? There are lots of different tactics at play, but I would always suggest that you select the scout for a couple of reasons. Firstly, as the name implies, they're very good at exploring the map. And secondly, they have access to a bunch of features, special little features, that the warrior doesn't, and it's important that you get your head around these. Once you've finished everything, you will be given the option to press next turn, which will take you from turn 1 into turn 2. One of the main aims of the beginning of the game is to explore as much of the map around your capital city as possible. We need to know where all of the resources are. We need to know where all of the locations that we can settle extra settlements are. We need to know who our neighbors are, other major civilizations, whether there are any small villages at play. The main thing though that you want to keep an eye out for in the beginning stages of the game is anything that has nice blue fire and a lovely blue glow like this. Some would call it purple. I think it's blue. These are effectively called goody huts, or at least the community tends to call them goody huts. This is a cave. If I move a unit on top of this, I will receive a bonus. So I want to collect as many of them in the early game as I can. That is my scout's job. So let's go and move my unit over to it. Whilst I wait for him to get there, you'll see that I only have a certain amount of movement per turn, so he'll arrive next turn. I have 2 other choices to make. Firstly, what technology would I like to pursue? Now, there are plenty of technological options as you go through the age, and it depends very much on your play style, who you're playing in terms of Civ and leader, and which legacy path you're going for as to what the best options are. At the beginning, I would mainly focus on going to writing as quickly as possible. Why? Well, writing unlocks the library, which is a building that increases your science further. The more science you have, the quicker you'll get through the tech tree. So if you focus on getting to writing nice and quickly, you can kind of eliminate the choice of what do I pick? Because the answer is all of them. These squiggly lines can be incredibly difficult to read in terms of working out which text you have to get in order to access the text below them. Trust me when I say it took me a little bit of time to figure this out myself, but what you want to be doing is going pottery, and once you finish that, into writing. Pottery is the only tech you need to get to writing first of all. In the early stages of the game, there is a huge amount of what is called fog of war and unrevealed territory. We need to reveal that as quickly as possible, so clicking on this choose production icon will tell our city to build something. You can build one thing at any one time. I would suggest going for a second scout. As you can see here, 30 production cost, and we are working 5 production per turn, so it'll take me 6 turns to do. Not a problem, I am happy to wait. If you're playing on a PC, you want to press Y to access the yields of the map. You can also do it by clicking on the lens toggle down in the bottom left hand corner and selecting the yields on or off. This can be a little bit confusing, but just remember this. Yields that you are working, aka you are bringing into your city, are very big, and potential yields that you are currently not working, but you could be if you improve the tile, are very small. So you can see the icons for the 2 food and 1 happiness on the tile to the top left of Roma. Well, those icons are tiny compared to the ones in the city center. What it means is now that I've hit turn 3 and we have enough food for Roma to grow a population, I can choose one of these tiles to improve. These resources will be added to my city. So currently we're gaining 5 food, 5 production, 1 culture, and 5 happiness. The happiness comes from the fresh water that I spoke about before. All of the other yields are coming from the tile the city center is on. It's also worth pointing out as well that any tile I claim will culture bomb, aka all of the tiles around it will also be added to my city. And this is where resources come into play. In your first few games, you want to unlock as many resources as possible because they add a lot of yields. Take the dates below. Working dates will give me, on top of the 1 food and 1 production that the tile yield is giving me, 2 extra food and 2 extra happiness. So the tile is actually worth 3 food, 1 production, and 2 happiness. It's a lot of yields. Eventually, I also want to get to this wine, which gives me additional happiness in the capital and bonus culture when in a celebration. Talk about that in a little bit. Because I want both of these tiles, what I'm going to do is select this one to the bottom right. This is going to increase my food by 1 and my production by 1, and it will claim all of the tiles around it. So now, if we add up the yields on this tile and the yields on this one, you will see that we have now got 6 food and 6 production. Scout is being worked a little bit quicker, and the city will grow a little bit faster. You can see the timings on both. The 4 underneath the left-hand 2 is telling me that I have got 4 turns until I get my next population growth, and the 4 beneath the little scout symbol is telling me that I have 4 turns worth of production left before we get the scout. Now my scout is going to move on to the cave. When in doubt, you will get 2 options that will give you some sort of story-driven yield into your city. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Simply pick the yield that you like the most of. You'll get the options between things like gold and food and science and culture and happiness, sometimes even 3 units. Culture is always a good one because it lets you go through the tree nice and quickly. Food and production are also quite good. We're going to pick culture in this instance. Every now and then, as you're moving your scout around the map, you want to press this button, search, every few turns or so. This will increase the sight range by an extra tile. So currently you can see I can see 2 tiles away from the scout itself. This will increase back to 3. It's a really good way of exploring the map nice and quickly. It also, at double that range, it also reveals all discoveries, like the cave before it, or in this instance, a coastal edifice. I'm going to need either an embarked unit or a boat to go and find that, but it's a really good way of exploring the map really quickly. So I would say every 3 or 4 turns you want to press that button. Remember, it takes a movement point to do it, so you can only move 1 tile beforehand before doing it. So if I select my scout here, I'll move 1 tile and then I'll press the button again to reveal more of the map. And hey presto, there is another ruin over there for me to go and collect. Note the blue and purple color and light. Eventually you will earn enough culture to choose your first civic. You've actually been working on a civic this entire time. It's just at the beginning of the game you only have 1 option, so it doesn't bother you with this. Now there are civics to choose in the Antiquity Age, a tree that everyone has access to. Lots of different options and abilities for you to pick up, or depending on the civ you chose, you even have your own unique civic tree. If in doubt, focus on mysticism first. This will unlock a Pantheon, a core part of the gameplay mechanic that you want to get in as quickly as possible. After that, pick up discipline. This will unlock the army commander, again, another core element element of the gameplay you want to unlock as soon as you can. And after that, Code of Laws. Again, unlocking a free merchant and the merchant system for trade routes. This is fairly flexible no matter which victory path you're trying to go for. Once you've chosen your first civic, you will also get the opportunity to choose a government. Now this won't do anything until you have a celebration, but when you do, you can select one of the two options to basically get a little bit of a bonus for your empire, depending on the government you choose. Once you've chosen one, you can't then change it. One of them gives you culture and production towards wonders, one is science and production towards units, and one is food and production towards buildings. Again, there's no right or wrong option, and it can be very dependent on the civ and leader you're playing, as well as the victory type you're going for. If in doubt, the best option to go for, because it's the most flexible, is oligarchy, because this gives you access to 20% bonus food for 10 turns. Food means more population. More population means more yields and resources. It also means a booming economy. You can't really go wrong with it, so always go oligarchy if you're not sure. And finally, social policies. At any one point, you can put a certain amount of social policies over from the left, these are the accumulated policies you have access to, into the selections on the right. This is effectively how many spaces you have to run them at any one point. At the moment, we can choose between 2 culture on the palace or 1 production and science on the palace. Now, at the moment, I'm gaining 10 science and 11 culture, as well as 6 production. So these choices don't really make a huge amount of difference for me, but I like the idea of 1 production. That would take me from 6 to 7. That's actually quite a big percentage increase. So I'm going to pick tool making and then press confirm. I now have my next population, so I can improve 1 extra tile. And in this case, I'm going to improve the dates. I would like access to this resource as soon as possible. Currently, as you can see, we have 6 food. This will increase by 1 to 7 for the tile yield, but then by another 2 on top of that to 9 because of the actual yield the dates give. That's a 50% bonus. Really, really good. So let's select that. You can see we can grab even more tiles. We've now hit the maximum range of 3 away from Roma, so this won't actually grow any more in this direction. It's worth keeping that in mind. But now, if you press this little leaf icon in the top left, you can see, hey presto, dates in my capital. Now keep in mind, you have to have a slot available for a resource, but in the early stages of the game, you're very much likely to. This is just bonus happiness and food. Very nice indeed. That'll keep Roma growing nice and quick. Otherwise, your scouts are just going to be busy making sure they explore around the map in all directions. Imagine your city center like the middle of a spinning disc. You want your scouts to kind of go in circles around it. It's always good to have a good visibility in all directions around your capital, just so no one really creeps up on you. We now have the option to build our first building, or we can continue producing units. Now I've got 2 scouts. They're going to do a pretty good job at exploring for me, and I haven't got any defensive issues at the moment, so I'm not going to work a warrior. Instead, we're going to go for a granary, because if we read the description, this gives 1 food on farms, pastures, and plantations. Now luckily for me, I actually have a farm on this tile. If I keep my cursor over it, you can see rural district, farm, and I also have a plantation, rural district, plantation in the tooltip. So not only does the base yield of the granary give me 1, but we've got 2 tiles that are giving me +1 food as well. The game has actually worked it out for me, and that's why it's saying granary 3 food. Going from 9 food to 12 is a really, really big increase. So we're going to click this and select it, and then we choose a tile to build it on. Remember, once this building is finished, it's going to expand my borders in exactly the same way as improving a tile did. I'd like to get access to this silk resource at some point, so I'm just going to build out to it and click the granary on this tile. It'll take 7 turns to finish, but I can wait that long. Pottery is now finished. Every tech you unlock will have some sort of bonus. It's unlocked a brickyard, which is very much like the granary, but instead of food, it gives production, and it works on clay pits, mines, and quarries. It also has given me +1 food on plantations. Very handy, because we actually have a plantation, so we've just gained another extra food for 3. And if I had any clay pits, it would now give me extra production. Don't worry about these yields. They're all over the place. You can see we have some yields for fishing boats and sailing, production on camps and woodcutters in animal husbandry, food on pastures as well. Masonry has production on mines and quarries. Don't worry about them. As you accumulate the yields, the game actually updates itself for you. The tile, even if I haven't improved it, this wine is a good example, has now got the bonus food on the tile. The game has already incorporated it, so I know what yield I'm going to get, and when the granary is finished, it will also update itself. As mentioned before, let's go to writing. This unlocks the library, and that'll let me increase my science balance nicely. You can see we have found an independent village. If you keep your cursor over it, the most important thing to look at is the little comment that says relationship. It will either say friendly or hostile. If it is hostile, the village is likely to send a lot of troops, aka warriors, in your general direction, and they will attack you. It can be a nightmare. So if you see relationship hostile at any point, the other giveaway is that there will be no yellow border around the name tag, instead it'll be red. You want to start building warriors. Don't let yourself get attacked. However, in this case, this is a friendly village, so we don't have to worry about it too much. I have a resource that is accumulating every turn called influence. If I can ever get to 170 of it, I can click this button and slowly befriend them. This will make them a permanent ally. Keep that in mind. We're not going to worry about it too much for now, but it's a very useful mechanic to get around later into the game. Another resource that you will begin to accumulate is gold. Now, gold is incredibly useful because unlike production, which takes a little bit of time to build things, the granary is now halfway done. Gold, which can be accessed via the purchase tab, can instantly produce a unit or a building. You just get it. Civ 7 can be an incredibly difficult game in the sense that the powers around you, be it major civilizations, other players, or these villages, they can be very hostile. You can get attacked at any point. I would always recommend that you keep about 120 gold in your treasury at any point. Just keep it for a rainy day. Why? Well, that is the amount of gold you need to buy yourself a warrior. This eventually will become a little bit of a panic button. If people start to attack you, you go in, you purchase a warrior, and at least you have an army. Otherwise, you may find that your settlement is captured. That's not good. You can see we are finding loads and loads of these goody huts around the map. They're giving us plenty of yields. We're finding them in the distance through the explore button. Every time we pick the upgrade that is most useful for us. For instance, in this particular occasion, I'm going to take the science and food because that's just giving me enough food to give me an extra population. And now I can add the wine into my capital, giving me an extra food, production, happiness, and the wine resource, which itself gives me another 2 happiness. All lovely stuff. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that if we press the resource tab, sometimes a resource isn't down here, it's up at the top. This applies to your entire civilization, your entire empire. It just gives me the happiness in the capital. I don't need to allocate it, and the 10% culture when in a celebration will activate automatically if and when I hit a celebration. What is a celebration? Well, if I click on this little scroll, or at least hover over it, you can see there is a little tooltip telling me 14 turns until the next celebration. If I click on it in the overview tab, down here gives me a tiny bit more information. I have 10 happiness per turn. 14 turns left means I have to obtain about 140 happiness to hit my celebration. Once I hit that, I will have access to either production towards buildings or food. So staying happy is an incredibly useful thing to be, and why wine is such a useful resource. Another thing you'll find as you go around the map are natural wonders. You'll know it because the game will give you a nice little animation when you find one, and it'll tell you natural wonder found. You'll also have this tiny tooltip on the right. Natural wonders are very rare, but they have a lot of yields, so they are prime settling locations to remember for later. In this particular instance, any settlement that has access to the Grand Canyon has +2 science on all flat terrain. That's a lot of extra yield. I only have 11 science coming in per turn, so I'll mark this down for later as a good space for me to possibly settle. It's quite far away though, so maybe I won't be able to find or settle it anytime soon. Now, as you can see, we are 1 turn away from finishing the granary. This is going to give me 4 extra food because I have 1 farm, 2 plantations, that's 3 food in total, and the granary itself gives another +1. So you can see we have 11 food. When it's finished, we should have 15. It's also worth noting that the 2 food, 1 food, and 1 food on the tiles will automatically get updated. There you go. Do you see? There's now 1 extra food on all of these tiles. Lovely stuff. This isn't good though. Unlike the other troops, this troop has a red border. This is a hostile scout. This is the aforementioned other style of village that now the scout has found me, they will probably send aggressive units towards me to attack at some point in the future. I would would always recommend having a standing army. The best ratio is about 1 troop for every settlement you own. Now, I don't have any military. Scouts are not fighting units. They cannot fight even if they wanted to. So we're going to take the time to build a warrior. That means I at least have a bit of defense if the village of Assur decides to come and attack me. 2 things have happened now. I have another little goodie hut that's given me some gold and happiness towards the next celebration. Lovely. I like to keep a nice treasury. We've also found another person's borders. This is Friedrich. He is another major civilization, someone who is also trying to win the game. You want to be careful of these people. If in doubt, try and keep them friendly. You can go to war, you can be militarily combative against these people, but until you're a bit practiced, keeping them friendly is the best thing to do. So we're going to spend a little bit of this accumulated influence to give them a friendly greeting, increasing the relationship and making it harder for him to attack me down the line. The better friends you are, the more difficult it is to betray you. It's also worth bearing in mind that as well as using your influence on these villages, if I wanted to befriend them, now that I've met a major civilization, I can also spend my influence on endeavors. These are positive things where I can trade some influence for some sort of benefit for me. I have access to 2 options based on my leader: military aid, where I can increase the combat strength of all of my units. I'm not fighting anybody at the moment, so that's not really very handy for me. Or research collaboration, where I could get either 4 science or 6, depending on whether or not he supports my endeavor. Now that's a lot of extra science. Even +4 would give me almost a third more, and that'll help me to boost through the early tech tree. So I'm going to offer him one. There you go. He accepted it, so that's +4. That takes us from 11 to 15. Very much worth it in my humble opinion. From now on, influence is one of the hardest resources to get in the game. If anything ever offers you it, I would always take it. It's normally a good deal. Machiavelli, a second player, has revealed himself to me. Again, I'm just going to treat him nicely. Keeping everyone on side really does help. I have found the hostile village. Do you see the difference? Yellow border, red border. This is aggressive. Going near it will cause me damage. In fact, this warrior might actually start to chase my scout and attack me now. Treat this with respect. It might be worth trying to befriend it in the long run to stop it from attacking me. But we have some distance between us. At the moment, I feel a little bit safe. Another population, and you can see because we have a granary and extra food on plantations from having researched pottery, improving a silk is actually going to give me 3 extra food as well as a bonus culture. It's a lot of tile yield, so let's improve this. And as you can see, the resource is now in my capital, giving me a bonus 10% culture. It's not a huge amount, to be honest with you, 0.2, but that will stack and become more as the game goes on. Now we can choose another technology. In the early stages of the game, have a look at other tiles that you're likely to improve. I put my cursor over this mine, or the salt I should say. It tells me it would be improved with a mine. Other resources such as silver are also mines. The camels are camps. Kaolin is quarries. Ivory is camp. Gold is mine. There's a lot of mines and camps. So I'm going to look for the techs that give me those boosts. Animal husbandry gives me production on camps, and masonry gives me production on mines. So the next options we're going to take will be those: animal husbandry into masonry. Now I have access to mysticism. This unlocks a Pantheon, which I can select by pressing this little dove icon. Pantheons are a permanent bonus that will last for the rest of the age, but typically only give you a bonus if you build an altar. There are lots and lots of choices and they tend to play off the map. I would suggest look for an improvement you have a lot of, such as for my example, I have 1, 2, 3 plantations, and find the option that gives you a bonus for that. In this case, there is extra food on plantations in settlements with an altar, goddess of the harvest. It's a very good Pantheon choice. If instead I had a bunch of woodcutters, so I'd improve this wood tile or this wood tile, I could click god of the forest. It would give me gold on camps and woodcutters. Or for instance, if I had fishing boats, I could go for god of the sea, which gives me production on fishing boats. I have a lot of plantations, so god of the harvest it is. We finally obtained enough happiness to now have a celebration. So we have the option to pick either the production towards buildings or the food. I would always pick food if you're unsure which one needs to be picked. It's a very versatile bonus. So you can see I have 18 food in my capital. We'll select this option, and now we have 21.5. Lovely. Every time you have a celebration, you also have another social policy slot. So have a look at what you've got and pop in something that's useful. I quite like the idea of more culture, so we're going to select that for now. as soon as you hit 5 population, there is another option unlocked to you in the Units tab, the Settler. Now, settlers are incredibly important because these give you access to more cities or settlements. That lets you take up more of the map and unlock more resources. At the top of your screen, you have a settlement limit. I currently have 1 out of 3. That means without taking any penalty, I can settle another 2 settlements. You always want to hit that max as quickly as you can. So we've hit population 5, we have settlement limit. I'm going to go in and I'm going to build a settler. In fact, I'm going to go back in and press the button again, and this will queue up a second settler to be built afterwards. It's never a bad option. The warrior, well, he's going to stay here to escort the settler when he's finished. Another civilization, Catherine this side. Again, let's play friendly. She is below me to the right. Once you have mysticism, as mentioned before, we're going to unlock the other avenues of the game by going into discipline and then into code of laws. This will unlock everything that we need to use to have a nice thriving empire. Every now and then, other civilizations may offer you exchanges. In this case, Catherine is offering me a cultural exchange. If you're ever unsure what to do, just click the middle option. This basically lets it pass. You don't spend any of your influence, and nothing bad or good will really happen. In this particular instance, I would just gain 2 extra culture per turn, which is nice. I have the option, however, to support this. By spending some of my influence, I can instead get 6 culture per turn, which is a huge bonus for me. So yes, it's very much worth it. My scout is also being attacked by the aforementioned hostile village, and I have nowhere to run. So what I'm actually going to do is start a dialogue with Catherine and offer her open borders, or at least ask for her open borders. She accepts it. I had to spend some influence to do that, but now I can keep my scout alive by running it into her lands. Thank you for protecting me. Animal husbandry is now finished. So on to masonry, as we discussed before. I've also found another natural wonder, this time the Great Barrier Reef. Food, science, and happiness, as well as giving extra science on adjacent marine terrain, but this is very close to me. So I might go and settle towards it, which is a good thing because now my first settler has been finished. When looking for places to settle, remember all the tips that I gave you before. Pick up as many resources as you can. Where possible, settle on top of a blue tile because it gives you +5 happiness. And most importantly, whatever you do, try to settle within 10 tiles of an existing city. If you settle further away than that, your city will be too far away to be connected, and this will give you all sorts of problems down the line. So make sure you don't settle too far away. Great Barrier Reef is too good an option for us, so our settler is going to go down in this direction, and we're going to move our warrior down to try and keep it safe. Now that I have discipline unlocked, I have unlocked my first army commander. Any battle happening within the 1 tile white radius of the commander, you can see it literally put onto the map right now, will give the commander experience, and that experience lets you get promotions for later in the game. You don't need to worry about this too much. All you need to know is that if you have military units, you should make sure they are within range of those units. Then all battles that happen will give the commander experience. So from now on, the warrior and the commander are going to move around together. I've actually been given a quest. This is a narrative event that will randomly pop up from time to time. Either I can give myself a reward of 50 culture if I build a library, or a reward of a warrior if I train a warrior and a slinger. Now I actually already have a warrior. All I have to do is train a slinger. So we're going to pick this quest that would give me a bonus warrior if it finishes. And do you remember the emergency gold we were speaking about before? Well, it's not an emergency, but I'm using it for exactly what I described we should be. Let's buy ourselves a slinger. That's half of the job. Next turn, we can buy ourselves an extra warrior, and that will finish the quest. We also now have access to salt because we have another population. This gives me 20% production towards training units. Now, I am actually training a unit, a settler. So the salt is in Rome, and now our production is making this settler even faster. Brilliant. Here is the warrior. And there you go. Quest completed. I have another warrior. Suddenly, I have a very, very strong standing army. If this village decides to attack me, chances are I'll be able to defend myself. Lovely. You can see our settler settler is now in place, so I'm going to select the Found Settlement button. This is a really, really good settlement for me for a number of reasons. It has fresh water, so I gain a little bit of extra happiness. It's close enough that a road has been built to my capital, which means it's connected. Later into the game, that will work very nicely. And with the first population, I can improve another source of dates, which again gives me 2 food and 2 happiness. By improving this tile, I improve the resources for Capua, but I can now go into the resource allocation and move the resource from my town into my capital. There's never any harm in making sure your capital is growing nice and quickly, so we've improved even more. Masonry, 1 production on mines. Brilliant, we have a mine. The tech tree is now completely up to you. Pick a legacy path you like the look of and basically follow it. So for instance, if you were going to go for science, this would suggest that you build yourself a library and then go to research academies afterwards. That's all the way down at mathematics, and it involves you going through currency, irrigation, bronze working, and engineering. So we'll start in that direction by picking up sailing and then going from there. You'll also find that there are a huge amount of things to build. Don't get confused, the game actually works out most of the yields for you. So pick something you like the look of, the aforementioned library that we were speaking about before. We'll build that in the settlement, and you can see it gives me 2 science, +1 science for each adjacent resource, and +1 science for each adjacent wonder. And luckily for me, it actually works that all out for me. Find the biggest number, and generally speaking, you're not going too far wrong. So if I build it on this tile, I will gain 4 science and 1 culture. Excellent, let's do that. My next settlement, by the way, is going to head up to the north. There's 2 sources of ivory, some iron, and some gold that I would like to work. So up we go, and I'm sending an army to escort the settler as well, just to keep them nice and safe. And there you go, the first 30 turns of my game. Well, I'm going to show you a tiny bit more because now I'm settling my 3rd settlement, giving me access to a really, really good foothold in this game. Follow those steps and you will be launching yourself into the governor difficulty in no time at all. Now I'm going to go back and explain the first 30 turns again, but this time with the lens of a sovereign player. 2 levels above governor and only 2 levels below deity. As mentioned before, players experienced at Civ looking to master advanced strategies and improve general gameplay. Now when you're looking to settle your first city, ask yourself the question, do I actually need fresh water? What happens if I avoid fresh water? Well, you don't get the 5 happiness per turn. You instead start with pretty much 0. What does that mean? Well, if your city dips below 0 happiness, you start to take a yield penalty. For every 1 happiness below 0 you go, you take a 2% penalty to all yields. Yep, all of them. It's pretty rough. So 10 happiness below, you would receive a 20% penalty to everything. You would also have a problem hitting your celebrations. Now, the moment it's impossible to tell how much happiness I need for a celebration because I'm not generating any. It says infinite turns left. But that's just the problem. If I'm not on fresh water at the beginning of the game, I probably won't get a celebration until I at least start generating happiness elsewhere. Now, there is happiness on the map. You can see this iron, these rivers, these vegetated terrain tiles, these all actually generate me happiness. You can pick it up. It just goes to show how much happiness the +5 from being on fresh water actually gives you. It's a lot. And why are celebrations so important? Well, not only do you get the government bonus, we were talking about the science or the culture or the food, but it also expands your government. At the beginning of the game, you can only put 1 policy into your government. Every time you hit a celebration after that point, you get another policy slot. So the more you go into celebrations, the more policies you can put into your government. Every single one of these options in the civic tree, as well as in your unique civic tree, these all unlock social policies that can be popped into your government. And the more spaces you have for them, the more of these bonuses you can pick up. Some of them are incredibly powerful. Like in the early game, Mysticism Mastery gives you 2 food in all settlements. That's the sort of thing that stacks up very quickly. There's also one just above it that gives you gold in all settlements. Now, if I avoid the freshwater start, I can't go into celebrations as quickly at all. So I lose the bonus of those abilities, as well as not having actually any happiness in the city. So why would I even consider it? Well, resources are one big option. Not all resources are equal in the beginning of the game. We spoke before about empire resources. Iron is one of those. It simply gives infantry units in your empire +1 combat strength. Now, later into the game, if I was going for a military pathway, way, where I need to conquer settlements in order to get to Pax Imperiatoria, well, having lots of iron is a very, very strong start. But in the very first 30 turns of the game, this is basically gonna do nothing for me. Other resources can be allocated to your cities, and some of them are incredibly good. Wool is what I would call one of the best resources in the early game, along with things like cotton and dates. Gypsum and kaolin are other examples. This resource will give my city 2 extra production and 2 extra happiness. That's a huge amount. The tile itself gives 2 production as well, so just working this one tile is worth 4 extra production. This is so much better than trying to work a regular source of iron. 4 production, well, if I settle my city down, I'm going to start with 5 production, so I'm almost doubling it. So in this case, it's actually worth spending a little bit of time and even considering settling off the fresh water in order to get as close to this wool as I can to work it as quickly as possible. The happiness of the resource actually will compensate for the lack of fresh water quite well. It's risky though, so in this particular instance, I'm going to move 1 tile closer to the wool, and by doing so, I might reveal more of the map. No, unfortunately I don't, because of the way the map is. Settlers or founders have a very, very poor visibility. And for me, moving off the fresh water in this instance isn't worth getting the wool on the first turn. If there were, say, 3 or 4 sources of wool, absolutely it would be, but we're compromising. We've gone 1 turn, now I'm settling my city, I still get all the resources, and my first population can be used to claim this tile to get over to the wool as soon as possible. It's actually worked out twice as good because there's gold over here, one of the best resources in the game. Again, remember I said that not all resources are equal? Silver and gold are up there with the best resources in the game. Anything that converts your gold into purchasing power is something that scales wonderfully. And 20% towards all buildings? Yeah, this is a resource you want to get pretty quickly. It's worth making settlements just to pick up sources of gold and silver, as well as extra sources in the early game of things like wool and cotton and dates. Now, I would always recommend going for the scout, but here is a little bit of a fact for you. Yes, goody huts are really worth looking for. Anything that gives you those early game bonuses, you want to be finding them as quickly as possible, like over here. But you also have another objective, a secret objective that may not quickly become apparent. Eventually, this age is going to end. An exploration will come through, and in exploration, we need to get out to distant lands as soon as we can. Where are distant lands? Well, they are somewhere to the left of you or to the right of you. It is imperative that at some point this age, you find the coast. You need to know where the very, very most left or right point, depending on which side of the continent you settle, is to you. How do you do that? Well, you use your scouts and you look at the map. Can you see this navigable river goes from small to big? It also, if we zoom in on it, you can actually see the water flowing from right to left. This indicates for me that the sea is in this direction. Now, we might hit a lake before we get to the sea, but I believe it's going to be over to my left. So very early on, I want to find that land and I want to make sure that we are exploiting it as best as possible. So our scouts are actually going to be moving to make sure we have the coast mapped out. If this involves me missing a couple of goody huts, fine. You don't want to miss too many of them, but it's important we find extra land as soon as we can. And look at this. We can immediately grab this tile and start working on the pasture as soon as we can. Now we've unlocked this tile, there is something else we can do, and this is called citizen relocation. Once you have a rural improvement, if you plop a building over the top of it, that population can get reallocated. What does that mean? Well, we can have a second culture bomb. It's worth bearing in mind that sometimes if you put a building down and you haven't finished it, it can be a little bit odd. But watch this. I've put the farm down in order to claim all of this terrain. Now I'm going to place the granary on the same tile, like so. Now I can reallocate the population. I can't put it on the wool because the granary is yet to be finished. However, I can put it instead on the iron, giving me 2 production, which will take me from 5 to 7, which will finish my granary nice and quickly, but it then gives me a second culture bomb and means that I can now work towards getting the gold as quickly as possible. Remember, you can move your rural improvements by placing buildings over the top of them. Just keep in mind, some buildings, well, they are a little bit wasted in terms of tiles. There were 2 resources adjacent to that tile, so it would have given me a +2 bonus on any science or production building. In this instance, I actually have a better tile. This one gives me 3 bonus, so I don't mind too much, but just keep it in mind. Remember to really evaluate the tiles around you when working out which technologies to go for. This start is very different from my last. I actually have a mine already, and I'm likely to put down a second mine. I'm also likely to put down a pasture. Out of all of the improvements in the early game, mines and quarries are worse than everything else. Why? Well, the bonus yields for mines and quarries are stuck on the second tier of technology under masonry, unlike all of the other improvements which are on the first tier, such as sailing, pottery, and animal husbandry. Because of that, mines take a long time to get improved. It's also worth bearing in mind that mines actually live in pottery for their warehouse building, the brickyard. So it's kind of just in the wrong direction. Heavy plantation and farm start tends to be a little bit quicker. No matter, we're likely to get a pasture, we're likely to pick up multiple mines. Pasture food is underneath animal husbandry, so we'll work on this first. Then we'll go for pottery to build the brickyard, and then we'll go for masonry to get the extra production from mines. You can see in this instance, because I'm running such a low food start, I'm actually working a second building before I get the scout out. Now, I'm not entirely convinced this is the best option for me per se, but I need the granary in order to produce a little bit more food so that my capital starts to grow. We need to hit 5 population as soon as we can. Otherwise, we can't make our settlers, so can't have that going on. Grand Canyon is only a little bit to the side of me. Perfect. That's a good second spot. Next population, improve the gold. It is such a good resource. We really do want to get that as soon as we can. And as discussed and predicted by the Navigable River, the coast is to my left. Brilliant. We know where it is now. We want to start mapping it out as soon as we can. The big difference between this and earlier difficulties is you really want to start looking at the resources and yields you have at the beginning of the game and using that to determine which victory paths are going to be best suited to you. This is a very heavy production start. There is not much food around, not really many food resources, but there are lots of production resources, like lots of copies of wool. We even have another copy of gypsum, which gives me more production. And there are things like marble around. What does that mean for me? Well, games that involve more production are likely to work better for me. Science? Science could work, but military could be really handy for me. Lots of production means a great capacity to make a lot of troops. It also gives me a lot of production towards making wonders. So as you tech and civic up, make sure you let your start give you a little bit of direction. Don't go into a game absolutely adamant that you know which legacy path you're going to go down. Such a heavy production start really does suit going for a very wonder heavy opening. So I'm going to keep that in mind as we go around. Because of that, when I pick a government, I will allow myself to get led by the game. I'm going to be using a lot of production, and we're going to possibly be going to war. So despotism, 30% production towards training infantry units could be really handy, or classical republic. This gives me production towards constructing wonders and the culture to unlock the wonders faster. Let your start lead you. Let's go classical republic today. And because we want to be going for wonders nice and quickly, and we have a lot of production in the capital already, charismatic leader suddenly is the better choice. Now for pottery to get the brickyard. I would still recommend going for a Pantheon. There are lots of Pantheons that could help this game, and altars that give production on mines could be quite useful. My second scout is now out. I'm going to put a turn into the production of a warrior. As the difficulty levels go up, villages are more and more likely to start out as hostile. So you need more and more starting army to keep you safe, especially now this one's found me. However, the other advantage to having lots of production is the ability to produce settlers nice and quickly. Doesn't look like it for now. 8 turns on a settler. No, I have the population now, and here is the pasture. 2 food, 4 production, and 2 happiness once that has been worked. So we're going to go from 7 production to 11 and 8 turn settlers. No, now we have 5 turn. There we go. Warrior finished. Now we're heading for settlers. Where are we going to settle? Well, I would like the Grand Canyon, but it's close enough to me that I think I can keep it under my control. There are 2 other areas I want to focus on. To the north, a copy of silver, one of the best resources in the game, but also a double production resource spawn. If I was to settle there, I could get both of these and send them down to my capital to really beef up the production. And to my south, claiming more of the coast, there is a food resource in the fish, but also additional food in the Kaelin and wonder production in tropical, plains, and desert. I have quite a bit of plains. I have quite a lot of tropical, so extra wonder production would help quite nicely for my win condition. Mysticism. And we've unlocked a celebration. I don't have any wonders to build at the moment, so we're going to pick culture just to go through the tree a little faster. And we only have one settlement, so let's take the production and the science on the palace for now. Again, looking at my start, lots of mines, potentially lots of pastures, lots of wonder production. Monument to the Gods, constructing wonders faster has already been taken. So in this instance, I'm going to go for stone circles, +1 production on clay pits, mines, and quarries. Lots of production in Roma. That will come in very handy for me later. Reevaluate which civic order you're going for. Yes, it would be really good to unlock the commander as soon as possible, but am I going to use it? No, unlikely. What would be better for me is to go down Mysticism Mastery. This would give me clan networks for +2 food in all settlements, and I'm likely to have multiple settlements within the next few turns because our settlers are now being produced. But it also unlocks the first wonder, happiness and science on tropical terrain in this settlement. I have quite a bit of tropical terrain. That's a really, really good combination for me. So let's divert the plan and head towards that mastery. Now this is a settlement location, but I like the sound of 2 cotton, one of my favorite early game resources, 2 food and 2 production each, and a source of dates, a triple resource start. That would really boost the power of Roma very quickly. I'd be very tempted to settle down there as fast as I can. It's worth checking out in more detail, I think. In fact, it's so good, I'm actually going to go and settle it first. So let's send my warrior down and go and claim that land as fast as we physically can. Oh, it's going to make me a lot of friends, including with Xerxes, who has spawned over to it. Well, all the better for sending my settler over in this direction faster. Let's keep a friendly greeting, and we'll keep an eye on all of those warriors. He's likely to go and claim this area pretty fast. Wow, he started with 2 cotton. That's why his settlement is doing so well. It's also why it's actually a really good idea that I'm bringing the warrior down. I'm going to probably need to defend that settlement more than I would like. We know we're going to be improving mines a lot in this city, so I'm going to keep making mines. We're going to go down towards this iron resource. I'm going to do that by claiming this mine below me. It's not giving me much yield at the moment, but give it a few turns, it will. So here we go. Mysticism unlocked, setting me up nicely. We're going to change the policies, and because we now have 2 settlements, these cards that give me just a little benefit on one place are suddenly worse than things that give me benefits in every place. So clan networks and priesthood mean that when I settle my second settlement, we are now gaining 4 food and 4 gold total. A massive upgrade for my civilization. And indeed, we're going to just double up on that by building a brickyard with a little bit of gold, because this will give my capital 4 production, 1 for every mine. I have 3 of them, and then 1 from the building. Do you see the science and the culture? Let me explain that. The only palace you have is in your capital. The palace has a bonus, which you will not find written anywhere in the Civipedia, which gives you +1 science and +1 culture for every completed quarter. That's an urban district with 2 buildings in it surrounding it. So I have a granary to the top right. If I purchase a brickyard on that tile, it will give me a bonus 1 science and 1 culture. There is up to a potential +6 available to you if you have quarters around your palace. Now, it is not a huge bonus. I'm already getting 10 science and 14 culture, but it means it's probably worth completing this rather than going for a culture bomb around. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Watch my production goes from 11, and now suddenly we're on 15, and even better, Ravenna has now claimed its first resource, which is this cotton, and I'm going to bring that back to my capital for 17 production. Now we are cooking on gas. So once we have this settler finished, we're going to start by building my first wonder. I'm also going to build with a little bit of forethought in mind. This 3 resource spread means that this tile is going to have a +3 bonus on production and science buildings. Very handy, especially on production buildings if I'm choosing to build a load of wonders. However, all wonders, as in the ones I'm building, they give an extra adjacency. So if I put it on one of these 2 tiles, this becomes a +4 tile. So I'm just going to think about that going forward. This one is a mine. I don't want to replace that if I can, because mines are really good, but this one's a woodcutter. Less good for me. Let's just plonk that down. Going to take 17 turns, but we'll give it a good crack. You can see we're meeting people. I like friendly greetings. It just stops a little bit of that threat of early war, especially Catherine. Catherine is one of the best people you could ever meet because she can give you science and cultural endeavors. So actually, we're going to start trying to be her friend as soon as possible. Yeah, she supports that. Excellent. Well, I think we're probably going to go all in on wonders. So let's start unlocking some by going for discipline and then mastery. Each of these will unlock a wonder for me. Our next settler is finished, and production to the capital. I think that's what we're going to focus on. So let's head over to this tile. This will give us the beautiful gypsum, a quarry resource. It will give us the pasture and then access to the silver as well. Cultural exchanges. I know I'm heading for wonders, so anything that gives me culture is something I will absolutely support. More cotton for the capital, flooding it with production as quickly as possible. Massively helps with the wonder building. Masonry has now given me more production on my mines in my capital. Look at these. 4 production, 2 production, 2 production. We're now up to 22, and we haven't even finished the altar. Forwards to irrigation and hanging gardens. Another wonder and an increased settlement limit. And here is the 3rd settlement as well. Remember, piling all of the bonuses in on stuff that's going to improve my capital. This resource is another +2 production. So we just keep taking turns off and off and off. And sure, we're dealing with some hostile warriors down in our southernmost settlement, but you can see we've chosen a victory path and we have built our resource accumulation and our improvements around the tactics that we want to employ to make sure that we are doing this as well as we can. Roma is flooded with production, and at any point I could say no wonders. Let's instead raise an army and produce them very, very quickly. It's always an option. The big difference between sovereign and governor is you want to make sure that you are playing adaptably. It's very, very easy in Civilization to just play the same way every single time. Allow your strategies to become adaptable based on the map that you're seeing. And remember, there are some really good things that you want to claim. The Grand Canyon is a fantastic diversion, but does it help me with my scheme? Does it help me get my chosen victory? No. So I'm not prioritizing it. Instead, we're rushing the resources that help my victory condition. And finally, we're going to be looking at the first 30 turns with the eye of a deity player. Deity players are masters at Civ, looking for the most complicated tips and learning that I, Ryan, can provide. The aim of this tutorial is to encourage you to think several steps ahead of what's currently going on, to keep the future in mind. We've already spoken about how not every resource is equal, and there are 2 ways we need to consider this. Firstly, the reality is some resources are just better than others. Full stop. Yes, 2 food in production is good, but if you pick up a resource that, say, for instance, gives you 10% extra production towards wonders and your city has 100 production in it, well, the 10 extra production you're getting, well, that's way better than cotton. But we need to consider short-term versus long-term. For instance, it may look like the ivory is potentially better than the cotton. The yields are better on the tile, and ultimately we've been given a random selection of Hatshepsut, who is all about wonder production. So really piling this stuff together, putting every single wonder bonus under the same empire, that's all really good, right? Well, this is a long-term bonus. We are not going to be producing wonders at the very earliest until maybe turn 25-30. We've got a lot of growing to do before then. A long-term resource is not something that we really need to beeline. If I was to maybe pick this up on my 7th or 8th tile improvement, that would be fairly good. The cotton is a short-term resource. That 2 food and production at the beginning of the game is city changing. When I settle in place right now, I have 5 food and 5 production. So adding another production and gold from a tile as well as 2 food and extra production. I mean, we're turning this city into just a regular city into a giga machine. It's not even close. There is also a limitation in terms of the reach of an empire in antiquity. Remember that there is only so much settlement cap. We start with 3. There is 1 in irrigation, and the rest are over in the civics. The 5th at entertainment, the 6th at organized military. Only 6 settlements. That's kind of it. The only way you get more is if the civ you've chosen has extra settlement limit within their unique civics. And some of them don't. Some of them do. So like, for instance, Rome and Persia have 2, but I believe Axum doesn't have any. So how do we prioritize resources? You kind of want to divide the game up into the early game in Antiquity Age and the late game. Beeline instantaneous bonus resources for your first 3 settlements. After that point, settlements 4 through 6 or 7 or 8, depending on your setup, those need to be focusing on your long-term resources. Move away from fixed bonuses, like just an additive bonus, like +2, and go to your multipliers. 4 or 5 sources of ivory stacks into an incredible amount. Marble is the same. Furs and wine do a very similar thing. Furs give you 10% extra gold in a celebration. You get 4 or 5 stacks of that and you have an infinite amount of gold. Same with wine for culture. But there's no point getting those when your yields are really, really tiny. There's no point at all. So 3 settlements to go for these sort of additive resources, and then after that point you switch. Secondly, we want to be thinking about our Pantheon and tech choices from turn 1 or 2. How does your Civ play into this? I was randomly given Egypt, and Egypt gains 1 production on navigable rivers. You've got to work these rivers as soon as possible. But the yields on them are also pretty decent. 1 food, 1 production, 1 gold, 1 happiness. That's the sort of thing that stacks up really nicely. There is a camp, there is a plantation, but otherwise we have pretty free reign to just work up this navigable river. So because of that, we know that we want to go for sailing early on. Sailing has got to be at the forefront of the tech that we unlock, not just to give us galleys to protect ourselves from barbarians or villages or players coming up the river, but also because the +1 food on the fishing boat is really important. It's also worth paying attention as well to the fact that we know we're going to have a bunch of fishing boats. So the Pantheon to get production on those fishing boats is really important. Because of that, focusing on culture to get to mysticism as quickly as possible on Deity Difficulty is so important. Deity players have an 80% bonus on culture. It's crazy strong. So we must be doing everything we can to synergize. It doesn't really matter when we unlock sailing. I could unlock it in 12 turns, I could unlock it in 8, I could unlock it in 6. It doesn't really do much for me. I'm going to get the same bonuses anyway, but if I get a Pantheon 5 turns after I potentially could, all I'm going to do is give the Deity AI an opportunity to take the Pantheon that I want and put me on the back foot. So making sure we focus on the culture as best we can is really important. I still think, even at this late stage of the difficulty tree, it's still worth going for 2 scouts at the beginning of the game. Because we have so much time pressure, we really want to get as many goody huts as is physically possible so that we can prioritize getting culture for our Pantheon or whatever our strategy might be. And it looks like our start is quite flattering. We're picking sailing in order to make sure that we really go in on this bonus. It's also really important that we scout around really quickly because we want to settle out to settlement 3 as fast as possible. Deity AI has such an economic advantage over us. If we are not using our settlement limit, we will lose. You have to settle out as quickly as you can. It's so important. Oh, again, sometimes you just don't get the luck. If I had 50 gold, I would have been able to trade it there for 6 turns of my Civic, but never mind. Instead, we can rush 10 production into the scout, which is actually not a bad idea. I could, in theory, look to get the Granary here and rush that instead, or maybe even get a Medjay. No maintenance cost on these, and 3 combat strength in friendly territory, doubled when stationed in a settlement you own. They're very good defensive units. Alas, we'll just take the scout for now. But look at this. 5 food, 5 production. No. 7 food, 8 production. Not all resources are even. But again, beginning of the game, you already need to be thinking about your legacy path. Where are you going to go here? Hatshepsut gets buildings and wonder production in cities adjacent to navigable rivers like this one. So we know we have a wonder boost, and I've just realized we have a second copy of ivory available to us. Already that's a 20% boost towards wonders in tropical, plains, and desert. Well, desert. You get the idea. There's some grassland over here, but I mean, meh. So already culture and the civic tree in order to make sure we unlock all of our wonders as fast as possible. This is suddenly really quite important. Remember, Deity will rock wonders really, really quickly because they have the bonuses to unlocking them all. Because of that, we need to learn when it is okay to abandon what is a meta strategy. We all know in Civ 7, specialists unlocked at currency and making sure we go for a good writing spam, that's really important, as is monuments for all of the extra influence in the early stages of the game. We've just spoken about how culture is really important to go to. You have to be prepared in Civ 7 to abandon what you think might be a good generic play in order to focus on a specific play that's going to win you the game. Because of this, we're going to be diving right down to masonry to unlock the monuments to get ourselves the culture as quickly as we can. We are not going to be hanging around, and because of that, we're not going to go near writing or currency for quite some time. Now that feels like a bit of a mistake, and in a lot of games it would be, but it helps us with our win condition. So we have to make sure we go for it. We've got our 2 scouts out now. The Granary does have the option to give us 2 bonus food, and the cotton is something that would be improved, but the Granary is not particularly useful. I'm unlikely to put too many farms down in this game. Our next, let's have a think about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, potentially 8, 9, 10 tiles, maybe 11, maybe 12 are already mapped out for us. So rushing the Granary isn't important. Instead, this is where I tell you to not neglect your troops. Deity Difficulty is brutal. The AI has a +8 combat strength bonus against you. +8 is effectively enough to give a unit like 50 to 60% extra damage against you. It is a massive swing. It is a brutal swing. You do not want to fight it, like, at all. So it is important to make sure you have enough defenses so that A, villages can't raid you, B, if we need to clear a village, we can, and C, the AI can see our troops. They don't think we're weak, and because of that, they are unlikely to want to attack us. As you find these goody huts, again, remember, what is going to help me to win this game? For me, getting an altar in place and getting a fishing key, the building we unlock with sailing, is way more important than finishing a warrior. So yes, I could rush a celebration, I could rush the warrior, or I could bank the gold now and make sure that I can insta-purchase an altar or a fishing key later into the game. That will save me to be able to focus on wonder production, given this star is so objectively good at it. Sure, celebrations are really good. I'm going to talk to you in a second about how important celebrations are. You really do want to expand your government as soon as you can, but you have to be prepared to abandon what is a classically strong strategy in order to pursue your win condition aggressively. Do not compromise. You don't have to compromise. Don't do it. So I'm going to work as many of these beautiful navigable river tiles as I can, and we're going to make our way over to this direction and to this direction as well. I want to make sure that if we need to, we can pick up the ivory, and to do that, I'm just going to culture bomb in various directions. There is also a fish over here that we could get later if we wanted a little bit of extra food. So the first one, let's pick up the fishing boat with the happiness, and bam, more food, more production, more happiness. Everyone is happy. Well, at least I am. And we've spoken about this strategy being really important for us to rush the Pantheon, but remember 2 things about Deity. Firstly, the AI is cheating. It has 80% bonus culture. It will get there before you. And B, the civics are actually harder to get in Deity Difficulty. The harder the difficulty of the game, the more civics and techs cost. So you actually have a double disadvantage to rushing them. Because of that, if you don't see a Pantheon that's really going to give you a huge amount of bonus, there is no harm in ignoring it. You could actually look at this and go, well, what's going to win me the game? Actually, rushing pyramids through the Egyptian tree is way more important. Or going down discipline in order to go for the commander and the Gate of All Nations, and we just ignore a Pantheon entirely. You don't have to get a Pantheon. And actually, sometimes it works better if you aggressively ignore it if it benefits you. Just worth keeping in mind there. Be mindful of village hostile scouts. Just like in Civ 6, the scouts will find your villages, they will report back, and you will have waves of troops coming along to ruin your day. So make sure you kill them if you can. I don't really have the army to kill them at this precise moment, but I'm going to give it a bloody nose in the hope that someone else kills it later. You never know. They may do. Every decision you make has to further your victory condition. How does doing this help me to win the game? Now, I'm going to go for wonders. I want my set to be as powerful as possible. And looking at this, suddenly we have a double wool spawn with this 4 production and 4 happiness that can be sent back. But I now have the option to also put a gypsum on this tile. Gypsum is incredibly interesting. Gypsum would be another production resource, which means settling on, say, this tile, even though it isn't a navigable river and I wouldn't get any bonuses, so it would just be a town, that would be 6 production I could send back to my capital, which would almost double everything. Sure, I wouldn't get a little bit of culture, so I'm gonna just miss on rushing the Pantheon, which, I mean, ideally is the better play. This would actually set up an amazing settlement for me. So I'm gonna select that in the hope that later on, this comes good for me. And luckily for us, we've actually picked up some more culture from the other goody hut below us. So let's rush mysticism as fast as we can. Speaking of, what's more important? What helps me to win? getting the Pantheon. So charismatic leader is better than tool making. 17 turns goes down to a much more pleasant 14. With quests, what is going to help me win? Building monuments? Okay, let's do that. That will encourage me to actually play the plays that I would like to do. Again, what are we doing? Culture in order to get our Pantheon, and then wonder production. Choosing the government is actually a really interesting choice, because when you start to play on deity, you have to think, what's more important? Do I build on my strengths, or do I cover for my weaknesses? What's better? A very lopsided civ with some incredible abilities, or a civ with no weaknesses whatsoever because they're so generalistic? If I want to build wonders, then actually focusing on food might be really good to build the population up and get more resources. Equally, if I focus on science, I'll unlock better production buildings that then I can use to backfill the production and build the wonders a little quicker. I would like to get the Pantheon, and I think the wonder production bonus does help me quite a bit, but sometimes the answer isn't as obvious as you might think. A story quest. Would I like to make sure that I have 5 of my unique units within 20 turns? Would I like to disperse an independent power within 15 turns? Well, the unfortunate thing is currently I have not found an independent power to disperse. I'm exploring around the map as best I can. There's a good chance that eventually we will find something. Ooh, take 75 damage but get 100 gold. Yeah, that's something that'll work really well for later. What's going to help me win? What helps me to make wonders? Reliably having 5 of these units. That will help me to defend. That will help me to keep myself safe. Heading now down to unlock this ivory, so we're going to start working down the river in the opposite direction. When you start to meet the AI, remember again, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to build wonders. So what is going to help me with that? Keeping peace probably is going to be friendly for me, so it's worth spending the influence. Getting a Pantheon quicker. Well, it's actually good if I get another 4 culture per turn, or 6 in this instance, because that's going to really shave some turns off getting my Pantheon. Yeah, that's taken at least 3 turns off. Gold at this point, not so much. Be efficient, like a knife. Ashoka, keeping them friendly. It always helps to do well if you're not being killed. So we want to go to masonry now. We're going to unlock animal husbandry. Production on camps makes the 2 elephants we've got a lot better. We spoke before about moving rural population with buildings, but on deity you have to be quite aggressive about it. This tile has no happiness, but this tile and this tile do. So it's worth moving one of my boats away so that I have the option to re-put them down on a better tile. It's also worth noting, if I look at the granary, I only have 1 space to put buildings. Urban districts have to be adjacent to another urban district, and you can't just build across a navigable river, not until you unlock bridges. So putting a fishing key in, actually that will unlock the ability to then build on this tile, and that is surrounded by 5 tiles that boost food and gold. It's a really good place to build. Equally, unlocking this tile would give me the ability to put production and science buildings down. I'm going to move this boat for now and move the resource to this tile for the extra happiness. But you can see the logical process I have. Does this help me to win? No, to be honest with you, extra happiness in cities doesn't, so I will just accept. Spend no of my influence and get the 2 per turn. Happiness towards a celebration. That would give me 10 turns worth of celebration. That would, yeah, shave quite a bit of time off. Or gold, which would let me build the altar quicker. I'm going to take the gold. The quicker we can take advantage of a Pantheon, I believe, the better. This is a hostile village. If we take it out, we will gain a massive boost of culture. So that's exactly what we're going to try and do. Delicious. The fishing key is finished, and as you can see, the food on our boats is now fairly spectacular. We continue to make them. We continue to grow this beautiful city out. And as soon as we get to population 5, what's the first thing you do? Settlers. As many settlers as you can get to that settlement limit as fast as possible. Remember, this is a wonder building tile. 2 early game resources to send 4 production back to my capital, and another +2 there for 6 total. After that point, you start looking at what else is going to be useful. There are extra resources over to the right. Dates for food, more wool for production, wool down here, double food resource. Gold is always handy. Anything that gives you a better purchasing power with your gold will steamroller you through the age really quickly. But I also want to monopolize the coast where I can. It's really quite important for me to get out to exploration eventually. We want to find distant lands. We want to make sure we're settled all down this coast. Let's see whether on turn 21 our luck has held. God of the Sea, 1 production on fishing boats. We knew what we were going to get turns and turns ago. This gives me another 3 production production if I build the altar, and we've saved up our gold to do just that. 360 gold, we can instantaneously purchase it, and I want maximum flexibility with where we build our buildings in future. We're going to have some space over towards the resources, so I will build it over here. 14 production, that has shaved decent time off our settlers. Now eventually we do want to explore the Egyptian tree because we have wonder production and also food on navigable rivers, but I always think it is worth going down Mastery of Mysticism if you are trying to spam out settlements, because the 2 feudal settlements does start to stack up really quite quickly. However, in 7 turns we're unlikely to actually have our settlement in place, so we're going to start with the +1 food on navigable rivers, a natural wonder and another hostile village. On Deity, pretty much every village will start as hostile, but this is a really good settlement. Desert, navigable rivers, natural wonders, yeah. Could be something that we want to go and prioritize. Deity AI will do this often. You have things rejected over time. I tried to offer open markets for a little bit of extra gold with Harriet, and she rejected it, which means she's likely going to try and attack me at some point, as is Ashoka. Wow, very aggressive set of people this game. Masonry time, pyramids unlock, and also the monument. We haven't got any wonders we're building just yet, so we're going to focus on culture. Let's get those yields up as fast as we can, and until we have multiple settlements, it's still worth going production and science. It helps me to spam the settler out just a little bit quicker. 5 turns. We can wait 5 turns. I have seen 2 AI settlers move across the top of the map. It looks like this spawn is so good that Harriet has seen it, and she's also pretty willing to try and grab it. So I might settle a little bit early. I can still reach the wall from here, but it means I can just cement my interests in this area before she gets too angry. Oh dear, people are denouncing me. Again, it's Deity Difficulty. They are going to do that. That's why it's worth having a very large standing army. So settlement number 2, here it is. We're still growing our capital out with some 3 food, 2 production, 1 gold, 1 happiness tiles. That's lovely to see, really. Really lovely to see. But just to throw more in, there is the wool. Oh, it's not connected. Sometimes navigable rivers can make connections really quite tricky. Remember the 10 tile rule? Well, unfortunately, I didn't obey the 10 tile rule because the connection sort of goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, that should be connected. I don't know why that's not connected. Yeah, well, if I want to connect it, I will have to manually use a merchant to send a road back, which I can do. That's not a problem. It's just more of a faff. And that production is just going to go into more gold for now. Still, it can be a bit annoying. Food on navigable rivers. I'm going to take charismatic leader out and tool making out and put on gold in all settlements and food on navigable rivers, because now look at these tiles. Yes. Now, as Harriet also denounces me, we have 2 neighbors that have both denounced me. It's worth pointing out that you should never ignore discipline if you can help it. Commanders are incredibly powerful, not necessarily just for the first 30 turns, but they're the only real army that is reliably brought forward to future ages. And when the AI has a +8 combat bonus against you, it's important to have as many bonuses back, and commanders can raise the strength of your troops in combat by a good 10 to 15 fairly easily. So you want to make sure you focus on it, and again, build an army. Sure, I have a mortuary temple, I have a granary, I have a sword pit, there's lots of things I could be building, but I'm going to make sure we have a standing army because I do not trust the AI. The AI is very, very likely to attack me. I, for one, want to be ready. My next settlement, by the way, over here, there's 1, 2 food resources and some extra wonder production. Excellent. That's where we'll be going. In order to further my game, I'm spending my influence rather on my neighbors who have denounced me on making sure that we start to befriend city-states. This is a cultural one. It's quite far away from me. I'm not currently fighting it. Having this on side would give me huge bonuses. And here is settlement number 3. This one has a road, and I believe that is actually built a road to this settlement as well. Yes, it has. That's now connected. This settlement is now connected with the capital. Sometimes the game just needs a little bit of a kick. The fact that there was a road on this tile meant that it could then see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's an even longer route, but I guess it obeys whatever internal rules of connection the game wants to follow. Great. I, for one, am not going to complain. Sometimes you just have to accept. And here we go. Further resources, and now I can begin to stack everything everything into the capital, building a resource-heavy mega city. And again, we've set up for success. Ignoring the fact that AI has stolen one of my sheep to the north of the vine. We have a lot of fun settlement spots. 2 sources of silver, 2 sources of gold, a lot of resources around that could very nicely be used to give me a good later game. Just keep in mind, what victory am I going for and where are my tiles going to go? If I want to get culture and happiness buildings and I don't have any mountains, where are my wonders going to go? Can I build around them? If I have a navigable river, where are my gold buildings going to go? If I have resources, where are my science buildings going to go? Never neglect your military. Don't be afraid to project your power. Another quick note on towns. When they get to level 7, you can specialize them. When you plan where to put your first few towns, make sure you have a bit of correlation in terms of improvements. Nekab, for instance, has 3 quarries. That means later down the line, this is going to be an incredibly effective mining town. It actually increases its value. If the resources and the yields are kind of a bit scattered, sometimes that town isn't necessarily going to be as good. Like Kamenu, we have a quarry. This is a pasture and there's a lot of fishing boats and farms. This city has a little bit more of a curiously unknown role. So we'll just have to find something for it. Never spend your influence unless you really want to or have to. Keep an eye on the AI on Deity. Do not be surprised if large armies randomly come towards you for no reason whatsoever. It's just what they do. But that is very much Deity difficulty. Regardless of whether or not you're a governor, sovereign, or deity player, I really hope this first 30 turns guide has been of use. If you like the format, you want to see anything more like this, let me know in the comments. If you've got any tips of your own that you want to pass on, the comments is of course the place to come. And remember, I have a Discord with almost 21,000 people in. Avid Civ lovers. We have both threads on Civ 7 where we chat about the game, but also threads that encourage people to ask as many questions as they like. No bad questions at all. I would strongly encourage you to make your way over and have a chat. I learn a lot from them. I hope you would as well. In the meantime though, I've been Ryan. I really hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. And finally, a very special shout out goes to Glorious Petra, Matthew Wilkinson, Paul Coffey, Portland, The Nickerman, Daddy Bear Todd, Toon General, Kappa Yobby Virani, The Uncivil Engineer, Lillian, Radiatore, Technology Poet, Poppy Dude, Clibben Ferdaz, Debo91, Mushkin Mandletort, Scott Stratton, Major King Kong, Skeptical Bear, Cinnamon Beard, Private Selection, Genoa Salami, Callum Billy, Garrett Gowan, El Truant, Creston, RB Hedged, Burial, I'm Daft, Gooberman, Dr. Bobby, Mixomatosis, NTG Golfman, Indigenous 68, Teddy Zursa, Barnaby Rex, Charlie Bears, Nate the Great, Alex Frost, Mean Penguin, Interplanet Janet, Frankincense Battlezord, Bookaluke 79, Bob Loblaw, Geography Teacher, Juvara, Morax, Sinikush, Echo Bear, Deja Fu, Kovawoo, Legally Trash, Is This Live, Sorted Dutch, Rad Bickley, Shadow of Gaia, Flower Power Bear, Dan Jamo, Buster Blader, Bob Tway, Abstract Fun, Slither Alley, JB Genius, Arctic Fox. Thank you everyone for your support. Goodbye.